welcome back to Mika Reaction Reviews, reacting to things on the internet. And today we're going to be reacting to a different type of video. We're going to be reacting to the book, The Art of Not Giving a Fuck. But not the actual book or not an audio book. We're actually going to be listening to the breakdown and summary from the author who actually wrote the book. In this video, he broke down the book from chapter to chapter, giving sort of a quick summary analysis of the book and the objective of each chapter. So I watched this video, which was about 40 minutes long, so of course we're not going to react to the entire video. I did edit the clip down to the parts that really stood out to me, which we're going to get to. But before we do that, I'll give you a quick rundown of what the beginning of the video was, so you get the idea of what he's talking about. So in the beginning of the video, he basically talks about why he wrote the book, the objective of the book, and the fact that even though the title is The Art of Not Giving a Fuck, that's not really the purpose. He's not trying to give people guidelines on how to go through life not giving a fuck about anything. Actually, what he talks about is to break down and analyze what you should actually give a fuck about. He talks about what are your values, what are your morals, what's really important to you. He breaks that down into achievable goals. He talks a little bit about the pursuit of happiness, sort of leading to no happiness or just more frustration and despair. But really what to focus on into achievable goals, cutting down all the noise and not wasting your time on goals and pursuit that at the end of the day doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter to you, your life, or your community. Not chasing after goals that's not achievable, kind of like what Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about cleaning your own room. Sort of like this idea of people chasing after something like systemic racism, making that their life mission, which at the end of the day really doesn't make a dent in anything instead of focusing on achievable goals that you could have actually achieved in your lifetime. He talks about much more, but that was the gist of the beginning of the book, the rough summary, a quick outline breakdown of what he talks about. But we're going to jump right into the section of the video that really jumped out and stood out to me. Alright, so we're getting right into it, but before you do, if you like type of videos, please like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell to get notifications when I do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm, guys. And if you'd like to support this channel even further, you can donate. My PayPal me link is in the description box below and also in the comment section. Of course it helps, but you don't have to. You can just like, comment, and subscribe. Another great way to support this channel is either join my brand new membership program, different levels, different tiers, different perks, or you can visit my brand new merch shop, links down below, and if you like, you can super thanks. Other than that, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Alright, here you go.
What's up, everybody? Mark Manson here, #1 New York Times best-selling author of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Now, the big idea to take away from chapter 1, and this is the most underlying thing in the book, is something called the backwards law. And the backwards law originally comes from Alan Watts, but I rephrase it in my own way. And I say that the pursuit of positive experience is itself a negative experience, and the acceptance of a negative experience is itself a positive experience. So I go on and give a number of examples of the backwards law. I say that the idea is that the more that you pursue feeling better all the time, the less satisfied you become, as pursuing something only reinforces the fact that you lack it in the first place. The more desperately you want to be rich, the more poor and unworthy you will feel, regardless of how much money you have. The more desperately you want to be sexy and desired, the uglier you will come to see yourself, regardless of your actual physical appearance. The more you desperately want to be happy and loved, the lonelier and more afraid you will become, regardless of those who surround you. The more you wish to be spiritually enlightened, the more self-centered and shallow you become in trying to get there.
Stopping it there. Okay, so I've already done a couple of videos talking about the negative idea of the pursuit of happiness. We reacted to it when it comes to Dr. Jordan Peterson. I recently reacted to a video from Big Think or Think Big. And so it's this idea of constantly chasing something that you think is going to make me happy. If I can just get this job, if I can just get this perfect body, if I can just get the perfect marriage, like if I can just have the perfect lifestyle, then I will finally be happy. Therefore, you will never actually be happy. Because even the things that you're reaching for, once you get it, it's going to come up short and you're going to end up having that feeling again of I need something else to make me happy. It's not to say not to have goals, but almost have the gratitude of what you have now and focus on what you have. Because if you're constantly putting your attention on what you don't have, then that's what you're hyper-focused on, and that's what you're going to see the most. You're only going to see what you don't have. You're going to only see what you haven't achieved. You're only going to see what you're missing. Instead of actually being grateful for what you have right now, I really truly feel if you're not grateful for what you have now, you're not going to achieve more. And if you do achieve more, the things you achieve will never fill you up, and you always continuously feel empty. One of the examples he uses, if you want to be the most beautiful person in the room, most likely someone who's always chasing after that is going to look in the mirror and constantly nitpick all the negative things they don't like about their face or their body, and they're going to constantly chasing after that feeling. But once again, it's always going to come up empty and shallow, and you're always going to feel the lack of that happiness. But anyway, we're going to move on to the part that really stood out to me, which is entitlement. All right, let's get into it.
Feeling as though you deserve to be happy without sacrificing for it. It's basically that idea of believing you deserve to have positive experiences without traversing the negative experiences to get there. I spent much of this chapter pointing out, both from stories about Jimmy, but also stories of me being a dickhead in my own life, that it's this belief that we shouldn't have to go through the negative and only have the positive that causes us to adopt many destructive and selfish behaviors. There are two forms of entitlement. Form number one is, I'm awesome and the rest of you all suck, therefore I deserve to have special treatment. Form number two is, I suck and the rest of you are awesome, so I deserve special treatment. So in the psychological research, this is known as grandiose narcissism versus victim narcissism. And it's basically, they seem to be opposites on the surface. Like one person thinks he's better than everybody, and then the other person thinks he's worse than everybody. But the behavior ends up being the same because both people have delusional beliefs about their place in the status hierarchy. One person thinks he's at the top, one person thinks he's at the bottom. But the behavior ends up being the same. They end up being completely self-absorbed. They think everything in the world should be altered and catered to them. And yeah, they just become unbearable to be around. And so I spend much of this chapter, probably the second half of this chapter, describing how the growing culture of exceptionalism, particularly with social media, consumer culture, things like that, they're always pushing us individually. Like if you think of beer commercials or like, you know, the way Facebook algorithms are designed, like everything is designed to make you feel like you're the most special fucking person on the planet. And my argument is that that is actually mentally and socially unhealthy because that drives an attitude and a feeling of entitlement. It creates delusional beliefs that you are somehow the exception, that the world owes you something, that everything should be rearranged to cater to your desires and your happiness, that you should be able to have positive experiences without accepting the negative. Chapter 4.
Stopping it there. That right there, that chapter, entitlement, is what made me want to make this video in the first place. Because if you look at it right now, before I continue, go into the comment section and point out the groups that fit these examples. The narcissistic, sort of grandiose entitlement, or the victim, I'm a victim narcissism. And the idea of the world owes me everything because I have nothing, or I am better than everyone, so the world owes me everything. Put into the comment section what certain groups or labels or whatever that comes to mind to you. I'll wait a little bit. For me, this idea that I am special, therefore the world owes me something, or I am a victim, therefore the world owes me something, is extremely prevalent in Western society and cultures today, especially in the good old USA. I feel like millennials, and especially Gen Z, have been birthed into this culture. We see it in so many different groups, right? Let's take fat positivity or fat acceptance. It's, I am special just because I am me, and I am beautiful just because I am me, but not because I personally feel that way. I need the world to see me that way and accept me that way. And not only accept me, but celebrate me. And I'm also a victim. So everything should be catered to me. Everything should be changed for me. The seats on the airplane should be widened. Everybody should have a size up to the biggest size imaginable. I can use my fatness as a shield from of criticism because I am a victim. You see the grandiose narcissism in both boss bitch feminism and the red pill community. Boss bitch feminism, I am the queen, I am the prize, he should chase after me, black girl magic, women are amazing, all of this stuff, right? And in the red pill community is I am the prize, I am the value, high value, women should cater after me, women should chase after me. It's this grandiose narcissism. You see both grandiose narcissism and the victim narcissism in both like regular feminism. You see this in the rainbow LGBTQ plus community. You see this in the pro-black, Black Lives Matter community. You see this in the ableist community. You see this in the trans community. Everybody has this sort of victim narcissism where the world owes me something because I am a victim, but also this grandiose narcissism of, again, black girl magic, black power, feminism, women are amazing, right? It's all about me, 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 me. Even if you're catering to a group or a tribe, it's like a group and a tribe of individual narcissists. And they're working collectively to a goal to get things they think they're entitled to, again, without the hardship, without working hard for it, and without the suffering. At the end of the day, the world owes you nothing and you are not special. And as soon as you can accept that, the happier you will be. Again, if you look at all the communities that I pointed out, and maybe some that you can come up with yourself, do these people seem happy to you? Do they seem at peace to you? And do they seem content to you? No, they don't. Anyway, let's continue.
The value of suffering. Starting with chapter 4, the book becomes a lot more about values. And it becomes more about what are we willing to sacrifice for? So like, assuming you buy the arguments of the first 3 chapters that we should sacrifice for something, that we should struggle for something, that's what makes life more meaningful and generates a more consistent sense of happiness. The next question is, what is worth struggling for? What is worth valuing? What is worth sacrificing for? And so I open up the book with a World War II story about a Japanese soldier who, it's super interesting. There was a number of Japanese soldiers in World War II, like they got stranded on random islands in the Pacific and nobody told them the war was over. So they continued to fight the war into the 1950s, 60s, and even 70s. And so the last soldier who was still fighting World War II, I think he finally surrendered in like 1973 or something like that. I'd have to look here. Anyway, his name was Hiro Nada. And I wrote his story here, and I used him as an example of how, like, it doesn't matter how disciplined you are, it doesn't matter how motivated you are, it doesn't matter how strong you are, how intelligent you are, how much support you have. If you have the wrong goal, you're fucked. If you have the wrong value, then all of that other stuff, it's just gonna hurt you. And I use Onada as an example of that. He spent 27 years fighting a war that didn't exist, literally killing people. He was on an obscure island in the Philippines. He was still shooting at people, killing people, hiding in the jungle for 27 years. And obviously he was doing an amazing job, but he was like Don Quixote. He was like chasing windmills, right? So the chapter opens up with that, and it uses that to kind of introduce this topic of values. So if we agree that we should sacrifice, what is worth sacrificing for? Good values tend to be 1, reality-based, 2, socially constructive, and 3, immediate and controllable. Bad values tend to be 1, superstitious, 2, socially destructive, and 3, not immediate or controllable. I go on to say honesty is a good value because it's something you can have complete control over, it reflects reality, and it benefits others, even if it's sometimes unpleasant. All right.
Stopping it there. I really like the example he gave with the World War II, the Japanese soldier who thought the war was still going on. And it's like, no matter how great you are and fighting for something, if that stuff, if it's meaningless or it doesn't really exist or it doesn't really change anything, it doesn't really matter, then you're kind of wasting your time. And I like the idea when he said the invisible war. You see, again, what I'm connecting with because of my own bias and the stuff that I talk about on this channel is this idea when people are fighting feminism as if we're still living in the 1950s. We're fighting this patriarchy that we need to smash that doesn't really exist. What they really are talking about is the 1% of the 1%, the echelons, the bourgeoisie. They're not talking about all men, right? But they're fighting a war of patriarchy like it's all men in an invisible war. It's the same thing with this systematic racism or white supremacy, this idea that it's this underlining racism that any moment is going to pounce and put black people back in chains, this idea that we're still living in the 1950s where everybody's homophobic or transphobic. They're fighting an invisible war, something that doesn't really exist, that's all up in their head, right? And so you can be as angry and as passionate about being the activist that you are, but if you're fighting against something that doesn't exist, then it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. You're wasting your time, you're wasting your life, and you're definitely not going to pursue anything worth of value. At the end of the day, just leaving you once again empty and shallow, upset and disappointed. I like the idea when he says that a good value is something that is realistic and achievable. And I mentioned that earlier, right? Again, it's this idea of these grandiose pursuits that at the end of the day, you're not gonna change anything. Throwing off your shirt, showing your tits to try to stop Roe from overturning, that changes absolutely nothing. But it's a very narcissistic pursuit. So focus on things that you can control. Focus on things that you can change. And I'm not saying like, don't have belief in yourself or self-worth and be your biggest cheerleader and believing that you can achieve something, but still you have to be realistic in that. But anyway, let's continue.
Chapter 5, you are always choosing. In my opinion, this is maybe the most important chapter. I would say 2, 5, and 9 are the most important chapters. 2 is the one kind of challenging notions of happiness. 5 is about responsibility, and then 9 will be about death. So you are always choosing. For whatever reason, when we feel as though we are choosing our struggles or we are choosing what problems we have in our life, they seem much more acceptable and easier for us to deal with. When we feel as though our problems and our struggles are thrust upon us without our control, that's when we suffer. That's when we feel completely powerless. The big kind of epiphany of this chapter is that you are always choosing. Whether you realize it or not, there's no such thing as a situation where you are not choosing your struggle or not choosing your problem. The only thing that changes is whether you admit it to yourself or not. People don't like hearing this point. They don't like hearing the idea that every problem in their life, they chose it. And the second section of this chapter, the reason why is I point out that we tend to conflate responsibility and fault. We assume that if you are responsible for something, it means that it's your fault. But these are two completely different things. You know, it's like if I get cancer, it's not my fault that I got cancer, but it is absolutely my responsibility to deal with the cancer. And every moment of life is this way. The thing you are choosing from moment to moment is how to value each experience. In each experience in life, there is a component of choice embedded in it. And we tend not to be aware of that choice, but as soon as we become aware of it, two things happen. One, we become way more comfortable with pain, and two, we actually get off our ass and fucking do something. Because now we don't care whose fault it is anymore. We don't care if it's boring or tedious or unfair. You fucking do something. You realize in every moment you have a choice to do something or not do something, to blame somebody else or take responsibility yourself. And once you develop that habit or that value of constant responsibility, everything fucking changes. So this whole chapter, I kind of lay that argument out in the first couple pages, and literally the entire chapter is just knocking down objections to it. So I knock down the responsibility, I call it the responsibility fault fallacy. I talk about genetics, I talk about life situation, I talk about surviving trauma, I talk about cultural pressures. There's no fucking excuse. I mean, if there's anything that I'm like an extremist about, it's responsibility.
Stopping it there. This is probably the second most part that stood out to me and why I wanted to make this video. You choose everything, and I'm glad he went through that list of all the objections people would have to that, because we always hear it all the time. Oh, if someone's a person of color, but what about systematic racism? If somebody's a woman, well, what about patriarchy? If someone just fails in life, well, what about their upbringing, their childhood? Not everybody's the same. It's always like an excuse. We live in a culture of excuses and enablism, and we see it as a source of goodness or progress, and I don't really understand why, because enabling isn't love, enabling isn't care. Enabling is just easy on that person. It makes the person who is enabling feel better about themselves. And there's really like so much I can say about this chapter. Like I've talked about my childhood a few times, and I definitely fall, like if I wanted to, I can play victim for the rest of my life, and I would have plenty of communities that would enable me and cater to my victimhood, right? I was assaulted as a child, I was touched and all that stuff. I was extremely, severely, physically abused my entire childhood. My father left, had a domestic relationship with my boyfriend, beat the crap out of me, assaulted again in my adult life. So I have a lot of reasons to go, you know what, life fucking sucks and I'm a victim. I chose not to do that. None of those things that happened to me is my fault. I am responsible how I deal with it afterwards. That doesn't mean that I'm still not the victim of that, but it means that I'm not going to stay the victim. And I remember watching this other girl on this other reality TV show, and she was talking about her assault, and somebody was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry for you. And she was like, don't be sorry. He took that moment from me. He had my body for that moment, and that was wrong, and he should go to jail and pay for that crime. But I have the rest of my life. I take all of that back, and I will not allow this person that victimized me for a moment to continue to victimize me by allowing that to affect the rest of my life. And I'm not saying it's not hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's still up to you. We recently talked about it when I talked about depression, that your mental health is not your fault for the most part, but it's still up to you. It's your accountability and your responsibility to do something about it. And if people really just don't realize the power they have in uplifting themselves, for some reason it's seen as a bad thing to tell people that. It's like the world wants you to be a victim. And like he said, as soon as you realize you have the power to change, switch, or shift your view on something, you can either A, just deal with it or change how you see it, or B, get off your ass and do something about it, and that turns you from a victim to a victor. It's kind of like that saying of like, there's no bad situations, it's just your bad reaction. I don't wholeheartedly believe that, and I will say this, when you're a child, of course, you have a little bit less power because you're a child and you don't even have the mental capacity to deal with certain traumas that comes your way. But as you become an adult, it definitely is your responsibility, your accountability. It's like my mom used to say, like my adopted mom used to say, like when we would go outside and we'd be like, we're bored. It's like, you're not bored, you have an imagination, you can choose to switch how you feel about your boredom and do something about it. So I really like that concept, is that you're constantly choosing. A lot of people choose their pain. A lot of people choose to be angry. A lot of people choose to be miserable. A lot of people choose to be upset and sad and all these things. And I'm not saying not be honest with the emotions you're having initially, but wallowing in all of those negative emotions that's just being destructive to your life, a lot of times you're choosing that. But again, people don't want to hear that, because then they go, but I was a victim of this. No one's saying you're not, but the way you deal with it afterwards is really your responsibility. I know people who live in victimhood, and I'm telling you, they never go anywhere and they are perpetually miserable. Let's continue.
Chapter 6, why you are wrong about everything, but so am I. Benefits of uncertainty. It opens up space for you to learn and improve. It helps guard you against like extremist ideology or just becoming like a crazy zealot for some cause. It opens room for dialogue with people, to learn from other people, to make other people feel more heard, which improves relationships. Manson's law of avoidance says that the more something threatens your identity, the more you will avoid it. And I bring this up in terms of what are the pieces of information that we protect ourselves from? Because ultimately, like, grasping onto some sense of certainty, it's a means of protecting our ego from perceived threats. And so Manson's law basically says that like the more threatening something is, the more we will become certain in things that will help us avoid dealing with that truth.
The whole idea of being okay with being uncertain about things, and the idea of people will avoid things that threaten their identity. We see that all the time. In every single community, tribe you're a part of, right? You avoid anything that's gonna make you go, oh shit, maybe I'm wrong and I built my entire identity off of this idea or this belief system, right? It can be really traumatizing to people, and some people will fight tooth and nail to avoid that, right? It's the whole cognitive dissonance thing, or the idea of, for some reason, there are people that would go into cults, and the cults will say the end of the world is coming in 90 days, and 90 days come and go, and the end of the world doesn't happen. Funny enough, what happens, the cult members don't wake up and go, well, they were wrong about this must be shitty, let me get out of this cult. They double down on their belief in their cult leader, because it threatens their whole ideology and belief system if that person is wrong. And we see this in these tiny little cults today. Again, feminism, the red pill community. Yes, the red pill community. We see this in very religious groups. We see this in the Rainbow Club, the Black Lives Matter, the progressivism, communism, Marxism, social, all of that. We see these people in these bubbles, and they're so certain, and you might be right. I'm not saying like question every single thing you think, and I don't think that's what he's saying. But what he's saying is be open to that. Be open to the uncertainty. Be open that I might be wrong about something. Anyway, let's continue.
Being able to say no to people, being able to manage conflict, that's probably a good thing to have for your relationships. And sure enough, that's pretty much how I would define a healthy relationship, is two people. Actually, I do define it in here as two people who are comfortable saying and hearing no from each other.
I just added that little bit that he put in the end about relationships, and that if you're not comfortable saying no to your partner or your friend, or if you're not comfortable having disagreements, then you probably don't have a really healthy relationship. And I also think that creating boundaries is extremely important to one's sanctity, sanity, peace of mind, enjoy, or happiness, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, guys, this video is getting long, so I'm going to cut it here. I hope you enjoy that. I enjoy doing videos like that. Again, they're not always my most popular, but like I like these type of videos. They make me very excited. Of course, if you want to hear his whole video, you have to go watch his channel, or his video on his channel. If I remember, I'll put the link. If I don't, just remind me and I'll give you the link happily. And also, if you want to get more in depth of everything he's talking about, of course you have to actually buy the book, right? Anyway, guys, tell me what you think, what I said, what he said in the comment section below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell to get the notification when I do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm, guys. And if you'd like to support the channel even further, you can donate. My PayPal me link is in the description box below and also in the comment section. Of course it helps, but you don't have to. You can just like, comment, and subscribe. Another great way to support the channel is either join my brand new membership program, different levels, different tiers, different perks, or you can visit my brand new merch shop. Links down below. It links to all of the eternal platforms I'm on, my socials, including my Twitter. Other ways to support me, other ways to contact me for business is always in the links down below. And if you like, you can super thanks. I also have a second travel vlog channel. I travel as a lifestyle, or I live abroad. If you'd like to know where I am in the world, you can go to the description box below and also in the comment section. Hit the link, go subscribe to my travel vlog channel, and there follow me on travel Instagram. My stories is usually what's most up to date, and I also have my other channel, Speak Freely. Links down below, and you guys have an amazing day. Bye.